Hello and welcome to episode 59 of MMO Weekly, presented as always by Chitty's Cheesesteaks. I'm your host, Sal Manzo, joined by my co-host and MMO executive editor, Mike Mayer. And we're joined by special guest, friend of the show, host of A Pod of Their Own, Maggie Wiggin. Maggie, thank you so much for taking the time with us today.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely, absolutely. And obviously, Mets are playing right now. Apparently, it took them 24 hours to get a field ready. We don't need to get into that. That's separate. But won the first game of the doubleheader. Senga's pitching right now. Hopefully they'll get another one. As some friends have said to me, it would be nice 15 years later for the Mets to play spoiler for the Marlins, who only make the playoffs like once every 20 years. So hopefully they can do that. But speaking of the Mets, obviously there's some baby Mets that are around, particularly Ronnie Mauricio. Got to start off the show with him. I feel like he's just guns blazing since he's been called up. Seems to just not stop hitting. It's been a real, I guess, shot in the arm for the team since he's been called up. Played a bunch of different positions since he's been up here. Seems to be having a lot of fun, a lot of energy. So just want to get everybody's kind of reactions and thoughts to Mauricio's now a few weeks up in the bigs here. So Maggie, I just want to get your reaction quick to what you've seen from Ronnie so far. Now making his big league, much anticipated big league debut now finally.
I mean, I feel like it's just been about as good as you would hope. Certainly you do wonder when a player is down for that long, like, what do they know that we don't? And maybe still they do know something that we don't, but at least for now, I feel like we're really seeing the absolute very best of what he can be. And is that why we're all here? Like, that's awesome. I love it.
Yeah, I think probably the biggest surprise for me so far, and we talked about this, Sal, when they called him up, was in August, he set a career high in stolen bases, and now he's up with the Mets stealing bases. He's got 6 already without being caught. And that was kind of a part of his game that really wasn't a plus for him yet. He hadn't had a ton of success in the minor leagues until last month stealing bases. He showed off the power too, obviously. We saw already one of the hardest hit home runs in the StatCast era for the Mets. And there's been inconsistency too, right? But that's kind of been the reason why Mauricio wasn't up previously.
Sure.
Coming into this, he still has his OPS was around 680. So he's striking out a little bit more than he did in the minor leagues, and he's not walking a ton. But he's shown you that he's going to hit the ball hard, and kind of the issue that you've seen with Mauricio is the same one that Vientos, Alvarez and Beatty have all had at the big leagues at some point, is not lifting the ball enough. They've all had the issue hitting the ball on the ground. So Mauricio showing off some great exit velocities. Speaking of Vientos, I think he's probably been the best of that group recently, which is kind of a surprise, right? Considering how he started the year and really wouldn't get any consistent playing time from Buck. And now that Vientos is getting consistent playing time, he's got 7 home runs in his last 80-ish at bats. So he's the one that to me has really shined recently. But yeah, it's great to see Mauricio up playing second base, third base, even at the end of the game, game 1 of the doubleheader today, got some shortstop experience too in the big leagues.
Right. Yeah, and Maggie, I think you made a great point. It's something that I talked to Mike a lot about the last couple of years. It feels like is what do the Mets know that we don't, right? Just as far as why he was down there for so long. And Mike, you kind of hit the nail on the head as far as the player that he is, right? Striking out, a lot, swinging and missing. He puts the ball in play, he swings at balls kind of outside the strike zone, and that was the player that we heard about in the minor leagues, right? But and again, to Maggie's point, I had said to Mike earlier in the year, at what point is that player just is what he is, and you got to just see what you have and give him a shot. So I'm glad that that he had a good August for them to kind of feel comfortable enough to bring him up, and then he's making the most of his opportunity. And as far as the stolen bases, Mike, that you brought up, I think that's a great point. Obviously, we know now with the new rules, speed is really going to help. So him translating that from the last month in the minor leagues to here is going to be a huge plus for them. And Vientos, it was funny. I was going to bring him up also. It's just nice to see him kind of get consistent playing time finally and make the most of it. I feel like last year and then this year he just was up and down. When he was up, he wasn't getting a lot of reps and wasn't getting a lot of at bats. Hard to be consistent. So it's nice to see him, getting consistent at bats and making the most of it. And I don't know how everyone else feels, but at this point, you brought up Brett Beatty. He's kind of feeling like the odd man out now. I don't know what the plans are for 2024 with Mauricio and whatnot, but if Mauricio continues to show what he's doing with the bat and that power that he has, I wonder if, Beatty's days as the, future third baseman could be, in jeopardy in a sense, because Mauricio is going to be breathing down his neck. But, it's all obviously good problems to have. I hope they can build on that for next year. But, it remains to be seen. But, obviously.
Well, Sal, as you were talking about that, Lindor
I was just about to cut in.
hit the home run, and now he's 30-30. So he's the fourth guy in Mets history with Wright, Strawberry, and Hojo to have a 30-30 season.
Wow.
3 home runs.
We set him up, right?
Dang, man.
We all set him up. We're in agreement. We set him up for that home run. I wasn't even watching. That's great. See, magic of television. Yeah, that's awesome. I guess that's a great transition to go from the baby Mets to the veteran Mets. There you go. Lindor having a 30-30 year. I feel like in Lindor's case, and we'll kind of circle back around to like Alonso and a few other guys, but I guess because he was the first guy Cohen brought in, traded for, gave a big deal. I feel like there's been a lot of fans have been very critical of him over the last couple of years. Look, I mean, obviously a 30-30 player. I think when you're going to look at the back of his baseball card at the end of the year, he's going to have around an 800 OPS, 30 home runs, close to 100 ribbies. Going to have a decent on-base percentage, and he plays Gold Glove defense and plays every single day. I don't know how you all feel, but he's one of those players to me that I think now that we're just kind of getting spoiled to see that level, and people are just expecting more. But I think if you took him off for an extended period of time, fans would quickly realize, wow, we'd missed that guy. So Maggie, I just kind of start with you. Your reaction to Lindor getting that 30-30 season and just kind of his season overall here as a Met.
I mean, I think it's wonderful because Lindor has everything that should make him a franchise player. And you're right that it hasn't been like the most comfortable fit at times, especially because, he got off to a hard start from the get-go. Sure. And I think that just sets a tone. And they had a really unsuccessful year that year as well. It just sort of all came together in a really negative way for a lot of people right away. Sure. But the fact is, he's wonderful. Like he's good at everything. He has a real like Beltran quality to him, which is I think why there's also, feelings around that of just kind of being so making it all look so easy. And and I think that's, also something that fans don't always click with, but something like this, I feel like I'm hopeful really will start to drive home just that he is special, that he is exceptional, that he was worth the drama that led up to his contract extension, which I also know is part of what kind of left a little bit of a sour taste in people's mouths. But, I think at the end of the day, this is awesome. And again, like I said, couldn't happen to a nicer guy. Just exactly the kind of player we are thrilled to have around for the next several years. Absolutely.
Yeah, right. You look up core guys, he's that to me, and I'm agreeing with you there. Mike, I'm sure you have some stats like you always do. Lindor's getting in advanced metrics, he ends up as a top 5 shortstop every year, and that's why I don't understand, the gripes. He's pressed with runners in scoring position this year. He's admitted to that, but still, like his numbers are there, and it's a team-wide problem. It was not just him. You know what I mean? So I'm sure Mike's gonna hit us with something riveting. I see in his face.
Well, so you were saying it, and I was doing it as you guys were talking. Lindor is only the 5th shortstop in Major League Baseball history to have a 30 homer, 30 stolen base, 30 double season. The other guys,
good, Mike? Is that good?
I believe that's good. And the other ones are Alex Rodriguez, Barry Larkin, Hanley Ramirez, and a shortstop for the Phillies that we don't really need to talk about, Jimmy Rollins.
Never heard of him. Other guys.
MVP Jimmy Rollins.
But yeah, so those are some pretty good players. And on top of that, Lindor's having another Gold Glove caliber season.
Right.
After today, finishing off, he's going to be a 6 WAR player again, like he was last year. He's exactly what the Mets traded for. He's exactly what Steve Cohen gave him that big extension for. He's lived up to everything. Like you said, the first year was a little bit of a down year for him, but that's really not a surprise. Same thing happened to Carlos Beltran, and he's going to be in the Hall of Fame someday.
And Lindor finished that season strong anyway. I think at the end of that season, it wasn't even that brutal. It was just a rough start.
Yeah. He finished up as a league average offensive shortstop, which is, I mean, that's not what you trade it for, but that's still league average when you're talking about him being a Gold Glover. That's a really good player. That's a 4-WAR player, which he ended up being. So that's his bad years, a 4-WAR player. So we're talking about a guy who's going to be back-to-back 6-WAR player, like I said, pulling off one of the a very rare feat for a shortstop, and he's everything the Mets have asked for, and it's turned out great so far. And there's still, I mean, there's no reason to expect he's not going to do similar stuff in the next 5 to 6 years. And just hopefully starting next year, it's a little different when it's on a Mets winning team.
Absolutely. And I obviously I want us to move along, but I do want to just circle this with, he also says all the right things. He represents New York really well, much like Pete Alonso. They both love being here. They both love being Mets. And I think there's, a lot of credit to that. And he said the right thing about Buck the other day too. And again, I don't want to harp on it, but, asking about the future of Buck, and he said all the right things, whether he really believes Buck should come back or not. He backed his manager that's still there. And I appreciate that. He's not a company man, but, does the right thing. He was manager of the year last year and all that. And, I'm sure, that's so far the only good team that Lindor's been on as a Met. So obviously that has something to do with it, I'm sure. But just appreciate him saying the right things. And, I guess that goes along with those kind of strange Tommy Pham comments that came out, that talking about the veterans in the team, and then walked it back and said, but Alonso and Lindor and Nimmo worked really hard. I guess real quick, Maggie, just start with you. Just your thoughts on those comments from Pham. I thought it was a little strange within the season too that would come out. I just want to get your thoughts on it.
It really does sit strangely, and it feels like there's more story there. And I don't want to discount what Pham has to say, but he certainly does have a dramatic history with clubhouses. And again, I think that just to put the context of it seems like there was a lot going on. Right. And it's sort of like I walk into the room when my kids are fighting. I'm like, boy, there is a lot going on in here right now. Everybody is just doing a lot. So, obviously, when things are good, a clubhouse is good. And when things are bad, a clubhouse is bad. And in the grand scheme of things, I have to say, given some of the clubhouse situations we have seen in the past, given the massive disappointment of the season, the huge expectations and the incredible failure on all parts, the mixing of, longtime veteran all-star players with young rookies on the same roster. It was all the ingredients were there for an absolute disaster. Right. And I have to say, it has not gone that way. And it's pretty, to me, it seems fairly logical to conclude that Buck had something to do with that. Sure. And Lindor had something to do with that. And Alonso had something to do with that. It's part of doing all the little things right. Part of doing all the little things right is handling things kind of backstage, so to speak, appropriately. And so, I don't doubt that there were differences of philosophy, differences of personality, and maybe some folks jerking around when they should have been working, in any other place. I don't really get why Tommy Pham felt the need to put that out there as he did. But at the same time, I also don't think he's lying about any of it. So, it just kind of sucks for everyone.
Well, I think Mark Canha really had the best look at it. And what he said was essentially, Tommy Pham works harder and is more intense than 99% of the people that play Major League Baseball. Right. He's just an extremely intense guy that works really hard and is constant. I remember, for example, in spring training, when there was some guys, Major League players in the backfield that needed to just get extra at bats, or they were a little dinged up, stuff like that, they'd go out in the backfields and get at bats. Well, Pham wasn't dinged up. He didn't need extra at bats, but he was taking those extra at bats in the backfield against minor leaguers just because that's his process. He just wants to get as many at bats as possible. He was the only guy that was doing it. That doesn't mean Lindor and Alonso, Nimmo, McNeil are being lazy because they weren't in those backfields taking those extra at bats. So I think Canna really had a good point that just because players aren't doing what Tommy Pham doesn't mean they are lazy or have a bad work ethic. So you have to understand where those comments are coming from too. So, and I also think kind of the context of when he said it and what he was doing. It was in a meeting with Francisco Lindor and a couple of other players that they were just talking about how, like, what can we do to get back on track? It was in June when they were struggling, got beat by like the Tigers and lost a couple of other series. So I'm sure there was some frustration, certainly, in simply what he said too. And players say things all the time when they're frustrated. So I think I don't take too much from it. And I really liked how Canna talked about it the other day.
Yeah, absolutely. And talk about every team. There's one trade candidate that goes off, and that was Mark Canna this year. Pretty amazing what he's doing with the Brewers, and wish him the best. But I think that's a really good transition too. Just talking about veterans. Obviously, Mike, we talked on the last show of the Mets hiring David Stearns, or the announcement they're going to be hiring him. And obviously, with that, we know the whole talks with Pete Alonso, his contract. So I just want to talk a little bit about we know things have come out now that the Mets and Alonso have talked, that they're powered on possibly years, but not money, things like that. Who really knows, right? It's a story that's not a story that becomes a story. We don't know. But I just want to get, Maggie, your thoughts first, on the hire, the announcement of Stearns getting hired, coming in, and just, this kind of contract saga with Alonso and all that.
I mean, I think Stearns coming on board is amazing. I'm not great that he's younger than me. That I wasn't ready for. I wasn't ready. But aside from that, I mean, I think what's nice is that he feels very tuned into kind of the general direction baseball has been heading for a long time in terms of, not just analytics, which is kind of the obvious thing, but like how you're using that. And then also, supporting things like, player development and, just various creative ways of taking care of teams that the Mets have just sort of neglected for a really long time. And I think a lot of that was because the voice at the top was Sandy Alderson, who was very much rooted in a different time. And for a while, they didn't really, I guess Billy Epler was the voice for the top, which okay. But I think having David Stearns come in just to, I don't want to say imply like clean house, but just to kind of get things in order. Like, what is missing from this organization? Cause it's something. There's stuff that's missing, and start to, think really creatively about how to use the vast resources that this team has, to really go like cutting edge. And I think that's really what the team needs right now. And I think just someone to kind of be a little bit of a guiding voice, because I do think Billy Epler and Steve Cohen seem to have kind of competing philosophies and approaches. And I don't think that always is going to end up with the best outcome. So to have someone kind of split the middle on that, I think is a positive.
Yeah, I know, Sal, we've talked about it kind of quite a bit because we thought this was going to happen. It's been on the books to happen for like 3 years now.
3 years.
Yeah. So we kind of knew this was going to happen. And it's just, look, Stearns has been a guy that's run really well organizations that won a lot of baseball games. And he might be younger than Billy Epler, but he's been in a position that Billy Epler really hasn't been. Epler really hasn't been the GM of a consistent winner like Stearns has. And he hasn't, like you're talking about, technology and different stuff. The Mets started a pitching lab kind of behind the eight ball. I mean, the Brewers have kind of had their own pitching lab for a while, and they're seeing the fruits of that with their starting pitchers, their bullpen now. They have a great bullpen with a bunch of guys that they really get off the scrap heap, right? So Stearns is going to bring a lot of different things to the Mets. And I know since the report came out that the Mets are hiring, there's also been other people that have come out and said, well, this isn't just a guy that's statistically thought process and all of that. This is a guy that does really well handling people. He does really well communicating. And look, we know, like Maggie said, pointing out Sandy Alderson, we know that the Mets, Zach Scott, other guys recently that the Mets have had, that structure really hasn't been in place. And even with Billy Epler, he's certainly probably better than some of the previous GMs they've had, but he was never meant to be that top baseball decision maker. So there's kind of that incompleteness to the front office, and that's what Stearns brings. Is the Mets, the Steve Cohen Mets, finally have that full front office that they were hoping for.
Yeah, and I think what I'm most excited about, and we talked about it a little bit, Mike, is everything you hear about Stearns is that he's analytically inclined, but is a great communicator and able to have players digest that information. And I think now we're seeing teams like Tampa, the Dodgers, teams that have really pulled away in this, kind of the analytics race and getting the most out of their players. It seems to be it's because they have people at the top that are able to regurgitate or put this information in a way that players can understand and grasp it. So that I'm really excited for. Obviously, we've had a few guys from the minor league level, development level, come on and talk just about Cohen's resource the last couple of years. So I'm excited just to see what he's going to do now. Now you have your direction in place, your head man in place. And we said it too, Mike. It's nice that Epler and Stearns have had a working relationship and know each other. But it's nice to know that at the end of the day, Billy will be more the figurehead and Stearns will be making, like you said, Maggie, making those big boy decisions at the end of the day. I think that's going to be the best for everybody. But transition a little bit. Alonso's having another huge year. I feel like this goes hand in hand now just with the off season. Maggie, I just kind of want to get your thoughts a little bit about how you see it playing out with Pete. I'm sure, like everybody else, we all want him here, but I'm just kind of curious your thoughts on, where they are, where they kind of stand with all this.
I will say I would be very, very surprised if they don't end up making something work, because at the end of the day, Steve Cohen mostly gets what he wants. Right. And he has every reason to want a fun, talented first baseman on his team who with demonstrable good leadership skills, good New York kind of guy. Like, he's the kind of owner who should be willing to accept some risk to keep a player like that around, because for no other reason, it's good business. If you look at the kind of numbers that Pete is putting up compared to Mets career, record numbers, he is going to be marching up those leaderboards very quickly, and they will have a lot of 200th homer anniversary celebration, right, whatever you want to call, like whatever thing they want to use to get, and a couple of years down the line when Pete is on the verge of becoming the most home run hitting Met of all time, they're going to sell a lot of tickets to those games that are going to be coming up when he's on that verge, and he's gonna be. That's the thing, is like, it will not take much at all for him to be the Mets top home run hitter. Sure. And I think there's good business there. At the end of the day, it does seem like he wants a lot of years, and good. He should want a lot of years, because what he's saying by that is, I want to retire a Met. Right. And, if he says, I want 10 years to retire a Met, that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to get 10 years, but they should also want him to retire a Met. Like, that should be a shared goal. And I think they're going to get it.
Yeah, I know. I think you pretty much know how I feel about this. We've talked about it quite a bit, that ultimately, like Maggie said, it just makes a ton of sense for a lot of different reasons. He's one of the best power hitters in baseball. He's also a great Met. He's been fantastic since he came up. Setting the rookie home run record to having a foundation that helps veterans and other folks that need help. He's been a great fan, like for the fans too. He's a fan favorite. So, this is like a well-rounded, not just player, but captain. whether he gets the captaincy or not, him or Lindor or whatever, but that's the feeling that Alonso has, right? So he's a homegrown Met. I think it's just a matter of when, more so than if it gets done. And I think that there's certainly haggle about years, and maybe it ends up being a little longer than the Mets wanted, but they get it for a little less AAV. So look, I just don't see Cohen letting go a homegrown player like Alonso. That's going to break the home run record, like Maggie said. He's only 60 away from tying it today. So I mean, he could tie it next year very easily. He could break it next year. That's not a crazy thought to have.
From your lips, Mike. From your lips. Oh my God, make it so.
So Steve Cohen wants that to happen. I mean, he wants that to happen at Citi Field. He wants to be able to have all the merchandise that goes along with that. He wants to have all the celebrations that go along with the race of it happening. I mean, think about filling Citi Field as Alonso's chasing the Mets home run record. It's just
it would be hilarious if he did 59 and 60 in the same game and they didn't actually get any race up at all. But I don't know.
Yeah,
they'll just have Bartolo Colon retire again. They'll have another Bartolo day. Fine.
But it just makes too much sense. And I know there's going to be a lot of reporting out there, and there kind of has been already. And I don't think there's a whole lot going on right now. But like we talked about with Stearns, that's one of his immediate first things that he has to decide what he's going to do. He's got to come in and decide if they want to keep, obviously they want to keep Alonso, but at what price point do they want to keep Alonso, and at what price point are they willing to go? And to me, that's kind of one of the things, if I was Stearns, that I would try to get done quickly. Look, don't let that hang over the rest of the offseason, because it's an extension. Get the extension done, and then you can worry about the coaches, the other personnel, and the new players that you're gonna bring in to improve for 2024 and beyond. So I would expect Stearns, being a smart guy, that this is one of the first things he really looks to wrap up.
Yeah, I said it the last time. Just don't be high and bloom and trade away your best player as soon as you come in. People don't like that. Don't just pay him. Pay Alonso, be all good. But now, Mike, you brought up Alonso's foundation. That's a great transition. Obviously, Maggie, we're having you on not only to talk Mets, but you have a fundraiser coming up this weekend, Dollars for Dingers. I wanted you obviously just tell us all about it. Where people can donate, things like that. We really want to hear everything you have for it.
Well, thank you so much. And it is a great transition also because Pete Alonso is our annual king of Dollars for Dingers, although Lindor might be competing this year. I don't know. I have to look at the totals. But so I am on a podcast called A Pod of Their Own. And we are women Mets fans, and we talk about a lot of things, including social justice. And from the very beginning, back in 2019, we felt like if we were going to place a high value on these issues, that we had to literally put our money where our mouths are. And so we came up with Dollars for Dingers, which every penny goes to the National Domestic Violence Hotline, which is an incredible organization that they have fielded millions of phone calls in their existence, and they have legal experts, medical experts, advocates available 24/7, and just an immense amount of knowledge and support there for anybody experiencing an unsafe situation at home. And so they're a great organization. We're so happy to support them. And there are two awesome ways to participate in this fundraiser. And I suggest everybody do both of them, or one will also be fine. So first we have the pledge drive, where you can pledge an amount per Mets home run hit. So this has been a pretty exciting day for our pledge tracker. And, some people do extras, like I got a little bonus for every Senga strikeout. So I'll do a little extra donation for that. But it's you can do it from anywhere. And it's just really fun to count up those homers. And again, it all together, it raises thousands of dollars every year. So $1 per home run, 50 cents per home run, whatever you've got, we would love you to participate. You can find that pledge form at homerunapplesauce.com or on Twitter at A Pod of Their Own And there you will also find information about the other part of our fundraiser, which is coming up this Saturday. And it is a meetup and raffle at Ebbs Brewery at Citi Field. And it will be at 4 p.m. before this Saturday's game, the 30th. And Ebbs is amazing. They set us up with a whole space, and they will do food and drink specials, 20% off for anybody who buys a raffle ticket. And the raffle prizes we have this year are out of this world. The Rumble Ponies have given us 4 prospect signed baseballs. We got Jet Williams, Kevin Parada, Acuna, and now I feel really awful that I'm forgetting Drew Gilbert, of course. So that's just one of the awesome prizes that are up for grabs. We have from Athlete Logos a home run Apple neon sign that is incredible. We have SNY just told us that they're sending over a prize pack. That sounds pretty amazing. I'm not going to say anything specific because it's not in my hands just yet, but it was one of those things where I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. And there's lots of other things too. We've got t-shirts and other autographed merch, and we've got books, and we've got art, like original handmade art, really beautiful things, fun stuff, Met stuff, kids, men, women, like lots of different prizes. And it's a raffle too, because, you know, we feel like we all sort of spent a lot of our formative Mets years as like grad students and having like no money at all. So from the get-go, we really wanted to do something that everybody could participate in. So, you know, our cheapest raffle tickets are $1. And there's no door charge to get or anything. So especially if you're going to the game, you might as well just stop by. You stand absolutely nothing to lose. I will get you everything.
That's awesome. That's incredible.
Yes, 4:00 at Ebbs. We will do the drawings at 6. We will be able to hold on to your items. We will be able to ship your items. We will be very flexible in terms of getting in touch with you if you want to leave early, whatever it is. Come on by and just say hi, because we also just love to meet other Mets fans and get to know everyone. So so Saturday, 4 p.m., Ebbs Brewery. If you can't make it, or if you can make it, Pledge Drive, Home Run Applesauce is our podcast network on our website. That's where you'll find a lot of this information. A Pot of Their Own is our Twitter account, and we're counting all those home runs, and we are posting prizes every day with silly song lyrics. It's a good time. It's a serious topic, obviously, but we sort of feel like this is where we just want to pour our hearts into it. And we get to see the best of Mets fans, the best of Mets, the Mets community. Like the team has been wonderful. The Amazing Mets Foundation has been wonderful. SNY, Rumble Ponies, everyone is killing it this year. And I'm just so proud to be a part of it. And I really hope I get to see some of you guys there too.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I wanted to let you know while you're here that the podcast is going to do $2 for every home run, and then $1 for additional for every baby Mets home run.
That is awesome. Thank you.
Awesome. Look at that. And you just transition everything perfect. This is you brought up our last 2 topics here. So obviously, I don't want to end the show without. We're gonna obviously talk about the Rumble Ponies. Also, Mike's gonna finish us up on that on the playoffs. Yes. But we can't end the show without talking about Kodai Senga. I know we mentioned a little bit on the top, but pitching right now, 200 strikeouts on the season. He's someone that's going to end. And Mike, we talked about it last week. That's going to end up getting not only Rookie of the Year votes, but Cy Young votes. He's really kicked it in gear the second half, and we've seen why the Mets were so keen on giving him the contract they did and signing him out of Japan. So, Mike, I just want to start with you real quick. Just your thoughts on Senga's second half year and just the year he's had overall.
Yeah, like you said, he's going to be top 5 in Cy Young votes. He's going to be top 5 in Rookie of the Year votes. He's been one of the best pitchers in baseball since like mid-June. After tonight, assuming he finishes off the next inning, he'll go 16 starts to finish the year of not giving up more than 3 earned runs in any of them. So he's just been on an incredible run. And like we talked about, it was just the small adjustments that he needed to make, getting used to the baseball in the U.S., the mound, just the little subtle differences that he had to deal with. And he certainly dealt with them now, and he's become one of the best pitchers in baseball. best strikeout pitcher, limiting hits, and now he's starting to limit the walks too. So it certainly gives Mets fans hope going into next year. The Mets are going to be active on the starting pitching market for sure, but the fact that you have Kodai Senga, that is an ace in Major League Baseball, really gives you some confidence going into the offseason.
Yeah, I mean, I agree completely. I think, you've got to feel as good about him going into next year as anybody. And I think I've been hard on the team in various ways, but I will say I think they've done a really great job here. And obviously, like, Senga deserves the lion's share of the credit. Like, he is throwing those pitches. He has been fantastic. You cannot understate the difficulty of the kind of transition that he has made. There's just nothing like it on this earth, of like moving across the globe and doing this incredibly difficult thing. But, I think the team really was very smart in terms of how they approached it and how they were flexible with him, even when fans were kind of like given a little pushback, but they really stuck with it, and it paid off big time.
Yeah, and I believe that he might have been your dude, the pick for the beginning of the year. I want to give you a little props there for that.
I will take credit for that. I will also add, so on a Pod of Their Own, we pick at the start of every season who's going to be our dude for the year, and mine was Senga, because the rule is, with your dude, he has to be like someone who you don't totally know what you're getting out of him. So, and last year my dude was Canna, so I feel like I'm sort of on a roll. And if any of the Mets would like to submit a request to me to be my dude for next year, I will take all offers.
They should be lining up, because Senga's having Canna had a great year last year. They should all be lining up for that. Absolutely. And just to put a bow on the Senga thing, one thing I noticed now, I don't know if it was directly involved, but the other day, pitcher on the Mariners, I believe it was Kirby, talking about how he told his coaches he didn't want to go out for the 9th inning or the 8th inning because he was at 90 pitches and he didn't feel he had enough or something. And subsequently, I don't know if it was that night or the next day, Senga, after his start, had an interview and they kind of asked him, I guess, about it. And he just kind of talked about how his job is to pitch as long as he can to keep the team in the game. And I love that. That's a bulldog. That's an ace. And again, no shade on the Mariners or anything like that. Everybody's, does their thing different. But I know as Mets fans, New Yorkers, I think we like the bulldog. We want the guy who wants the ball. So Senga's fitting in here just fine, which is awesome to see, and hopefully builds on this for 2024 at the head of the rotation. And last thing, want to transition, talk about the Rumble Ponies. Binghamton obviously was in the playoffs. Our guys, Acuna and the like, were playing in that. So Mike, I just want you to give us an update on how that went, on how they're doing. Down the Rumble Ponies playoff push there.
Yeah, unfortunately, when we were scheduled to do this podcast, it was a little happier chat about Binghamton. They lost 2 straight games, so they lost the Eastern League Championship Series to the Erie Seawolves. First game was a close game. Drew Gilbert had a big 3-run homer that tied the game late, and they had a chance to win that, but ultimately lost. And then I guess they just kind of ran out of steam in the second game and lost 10-0. But it's still a great season from Binghamton. And it was interesting season too, because they really got a late push from some of the guys that got in the trade deadline. Right. Acuna, like we mentioned, Gilbert, who we've talked about, Jeremiah Jackson too, that they got in the Dominic Leone trade. And then late in the year, they got 2 of the Mets' top prospects to start the year in Kevin Prada and Jet Williams to finish there. So they really had a great season with those guys. And they had a great rotation, too, with Christian Scott, Dominic Hamill, Blade Tidwell, and Tyler Stewart. You're talking about guys that are all in the top 5 to 6 of the Mets pitching prospects. So the thing about that, the exciting thing about that is all these prospects that we're talking about are all fairly going to be at least at the AA level. Some of them starting at AAA next year. So helping the Mets farm system, again, besides the baby Mets, just really isn't that far off.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough that they had an ending like that, but I mean, they should get like a win or something that they're donating to Maggie's fundraiser. let's get them a win. Let's get them a play. They're doing something nice. They should get a little something back for that. But I mean, it was an incredible year, especially like you said, Mike, with the guys that they got at the deadline. So it's just the future is bright. That's nice to say. There's a direction for this team for once, and hopefully it's all positive over the next few years because I know we're all clamoring for it. But I think that's going to do it for this week's episode. Actually, the last episode of the regular season, unfortunately. But Maggie, thank you so much for coming on the show. This was awesome. Everybody, please donate. If you're at Citi Field this weekend, go to Ebbs, 4:00. Please go. It's going to be a great event. And we'll be back with you next week to, unfortunately, recap a not great 2023 season. But between now and then, watch our guys, donate. And as always, let's go Mets.